Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of Man to Man. I'm your host, Hugo. As always, we've got another interesting conversation coming your way. The conversation today is with a gentleman called Walter Wanyanya. Walter's story is absolutely remarkable. From a little boy raised by a single mum to a superstar, if you will, rubbing shoulders with the likes of the late Hugo, the late Oliver Mtukudzi. And today we're going to unpack his journey about what he's achieved and finding himself. Walter, thanks so much for coming on to Man to Man.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Hugo, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, your journey has been absolutely remarkable. From very, very humble beginnings to rubbing shoulders with the likes of the late Oliver Mtukudzi, Hugo. Did you ever know that you would get to this place where you are today?
I think it's been a blessing to have been able or awarded the opportunity to do what I've been doing. In the entertainment scene, in the tech scene in Zimbabwe, or in Africa rather. I didn't think I'd be here. I don't think it's anything that I could have imagined or anything that I could have planned. I literally sometimes call everything that happens, I just have this phrase that says, these are the dreams that I could not afford to dream. Sometimes when you have been exposed to certain things, you then can afford to dream. Okay, tomorrow I want to be this, or tomorrow I want to do that. But I actually I could not afford to dream, of what I'm doing now. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been a journey of surprise, even for me. But I've just basically embraced everything that has been thrown at me, and turned it into something that makes sense, for me and for those that I love and for people around me.
So what would you say was the turning point in your walk? At what point did you realize that I never dreamt of this, but it's starting to happen?
I think everything has been very organic. First of all, I think my involvement in music was by chance because my mom used to work for this amazing family, the Wolves. They're now based in Australia. So she used to work for them as a domestic worker. And I obviously used to live on the property. And this family had two kids, two boys. One boy, his name was Sean. He was my age. The other one was Andre. He was about 2 years younger than me. So they obviously became naturally, the guys that I used to play with and friends. They were my friends, and they would invite me to come to church, but I'd refuse because I didn't think church was anything fun. I was I was a 13-year-old boy, so I wanted to do fun things. So church wasn't fun thing in my books. So I got invited once to go to one of their church meetings at Harry Magolis Hall. And I walked in and I saw a band performing in a church for the first time. And so I stayed in church. I started going to that church because I enjoyed the music. So I guess that for me was the first interaction for me to see a live band, to see performances, or to see people that were praising God with music and instruments and things like that. I'd never really experienced it or thought it was possible. So yeah, I stayed because of the music, and I love music, and the music bug bit and stayed with me throughout my life up until today. Again, like, it's a long story of how things then progressed and everything, and I mean, hopefully we can cover that as we discuss this. But fast forward, I also learned how to play the guitar. I was self-taught. Went into town and found a bookstore that had a book on how to play bass. I bought the book, they had a CD inside. I would listen to the CD and go to church on Sunday, pick up the church guitar because I didn't have one, and practice what I'd been, theoretically learning throughout the week. That's basically how I learned how to play, and started playing in the band. Fast forward again, Celebration Choir was started. I was a bass player in that choir. Fast forward, I'm managing artists while at the same time touring with Celebration Choir, Kenya, South Africa, States, and that kind of thing. And then I guess now it's the work that we're doing now with Ngoma, neHosho, the festivals we do in Zimbabwe, and the productions that we do also in the region, on the continent. So yeah, it's been a long and fun journey.
Well, your journey has been absolutely remarkable. But your mum, who was a single parent, raised you and obviously had a measure of influence on your life. Now she's been gone several years now. May her soul rest in peace. Just walk us through her influence on your life.
My mom was probably the biggest, influence in my life. She's probably the one person that kind of tolerated my ambitions, if you want to call it that, or things that I, used to talk about, or what I wanted to do when I, got exposed to what is possible. She raised 4 of us by herself. My sister was the oldest, and then my brother after that, and then me, the third born, and then my little sister, who's not so little anymore. So that was 4 of us. My brother is late. So yeah, she really did a lot, and she was the kind of woman that I believe sacrificed a lot for other people. So for us as her kids, and then also for her own siblings as well. So because she was the oldest in her family. So she sacrificed a lot of things. Education was one of those things. But knowing my mom, you could tell she was a very intelligent woman. So she did what she could do to make sure that we had the best of everything. So I can't say there's a time in my childhood that I said, you know what, we lacked anything that I needed. Maybe we didn't get things that we wanted, but we definitely got the things that we needed. She worked very long hours, but and worked hard, and it's things that I saw her doing throughout my teenage years and my young, my grade 2, obviously to grade 7 and that kind of thing, junior school. So I saw how hardworking she was, and the results of hard work. Also positive attitude, and the one thing that also was a huge characteristic about my mom was she loved people. She was, she embraced everybody. She respected people. She was always happy. She was always jovial. So it was that also that I saw Kuti, you just respect people as they are.
Yeah.
She never really, she always had a smile on her face and that kind of thing. She was loved by the community, people that she worked around with. Yeah, so I mean, I could go on and on about my mom, but literally write a book about her. But she's the biggest influence in my life. Yeah.
Well, when we come back, I'd like to touch on what sort of man you'd been if your father had been in the picture.
Okay.
Right. Stay with the conversation. You're watching Man to Man with Walter Wanyanya in the studio. We'll be back in a moment. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Man to Man. With me on the show today is Walter Wanyanya. Wally, just before the break, we were talking about the incredible work that your single mum did, raising you and your 3 siblings. What sort of man do you think you would have turned out to be if your father had been in the picture?
Sure, that's a difficult one because I've never really thought about it or dwelled on it to see what would be different really, or how my life would have turned out to be. But I don't think I would be who I am today because you're actually obviously a product of your environment. So I don't think my mom would have been doing what she was doing, work-wise, and living where she was living. And a lot of who I am today is because of where I grew up and the environment I spent my teenage years in. That kind of then eventually resulted in who I am today and what I'm doing today, that kind of thing. So I think it would have totally been a different situation. Possibly I would be doing something else, hopefully excelling in that area. But I think, after later on in my life when I needed male influence, strong, male influence, and I managed to get that when I actually needed it the most. My mom was already late at the time. I actually also saw the importance of um, other men in a man's life, because they have a different perspective. And in this case, all the men who have experienced life, who can tell you, okay, you know what you're going through seems like it's the end of the world, but it's actually not. It's a chapter of your journey.
You work very closely with Oliver Mtukudzi
Yes.
and Hugh Masekela.
Yes.
Were they an influence in your life?
Huge influence. I literally have them tattooed on my body. Hugh, I met him for the first time in person here at Harare Airport. So it's a funny story, but he was coming to Zimbabwe trying to surprise Dr. Oliver Mtukudzi. A surprise visit, hey, I'm here kind of thing. But I think he got surprised because they met up at OR Tambo in the international in the international airport. Uncle Oliver was going to the States. He was coming to Zim, and he was like, "No, I'm not in Zim," But already he's checked in. Already they're going to Zimbabwe. So he called me and he said, "There's a friend of mine that's coming to Zimbabwe. Can you look after him for a couple of days while I'm away?" And that was it. And I spent the next 6 days with him. It was the most interesting 6 days of my life, and after that we literally became inseparable. He eventually became a business partner. I did a lot of work with him and his team in South Africa, and obviously eventually after that, that's when I only started managing Dr. Mtukudzi as an artist manager.
so that's incredible. I mean, it's remarkable that it worked out in that way. And one of the things that we like to do in fact, the main reason that we created ManToMan is to give a platform for men to have these conversations. How critical is it, do you think, for men to be more open, to have a brotherhood, to have a society of sorts where a grouping of men, that you can talk to?
I think it's very critical. A lot of times, as men, we are alone, and a lot of times men don't speak about their experiences, because when a guy speaks to other men, maybe some men that are either younger than you or the same age, if they don't understand what you're going through, they're gonna make fun of you, or they're gonna make a joke about it, or they're not gonna take you seriously. But for you, it's a serious matter. You know what I mean? So because someone would experience those kind of things, then you stop talking and you withdraw until you get to the point that you actually just don't share anything with anybody, and you go through life by yourself, going through all sorts of troubles and whatever it is that you're going through. But I think it's super critical that as a man you do have at least 1-2 people that you can pick up the phone, or you can say, "Hey Hugo, can we have a drink?" Sometimes it's not even meeting to discuss a particular matter. It's a situation you just meet and you talk nonsense, and we argue about you being a Springbok supporter and me being an All Black supporter. We talk nonsense, but I walk away feeling like, okay, I can face that problem now. And I think with men, it's literally that simple. Sometimes it's not a situation where we now go into nitty-gritties, because I know women who want to dissect the story. Okay.
But is it not important to dissect?
So dissecting now comes from the relationship now progressing. So first of all, it's always going to be like, okay, we're just meeting as boys, we're just going to talk. And there's guys I can talk, I can call, and I can talk, and there's no agenda. But men don't do that enough, you know what I mean? And then the agenda could be now then turn into, okay, let's talk business. I'm going to meet with you and, hey, Hugo, you've done this in business. I'm facing the same problem, and you give me help, or you give me pointers, or you point me to someone else that's going to help me. Maybe the next step is actually going to go into like emotions now, where we actually then go and dissect whatever it is that you're going through. But it takes a lot for a man to then find a guy that they can trust, to then open up to, like really get into details. And that is, when you find other men that you can talk to in that sense, that's a gift, because a lot of men don't have people that they can literally go into details and say, okay, the matter started here, and this is where I'm at, and this is how I feel, and then you can cry even if you want to cry. You know what I mean? So having that relationship or finding other men that you can do that with, that's gold. And like I said, I managed to find two men, or they found me,
Yeah.
that I could talk to like that. And then the other hard part was, I guess, they prepared me also to handle grief, in the sense that handling their passing, because they helped me to get over, or not even get over, to be strong when my mom passed away. Both of them did. But then Brayu passed away first in 2018. And then literally a year later, the 13th of January, a year later, Dr. Mtukudzi passed away on the same day, 1 year apart. And these were definitely the most two influential men in my life. But I kind of managed to handle that situation, not because I was amazing at handling the grief or the process, but because they themselves had prepared me, in how to handle grief, how to handle the loss of a loved one. And obviously when Dr. Mtukudzi passed away, I was managing him. And, one moment we are all good and everything is fine, and then the next thing you know, we're planning a funeral, and this is a state funeral. The whole country was in shock, and the whole country was grieving. So, but I couldn't afford to be grieving and to be falling apart along with everybody else. I had to be strong and make sure that what needed to be done was done, and so, yeah, I mean, to go back to your original question, it's absolutely critical. So if you don't have any men that you talk to, if you don't have any male friends that you talk to, I think a guy needs to have one, especially men that are going to, slap you on the side of the head if you are, in the wrong. Because sometimes men just gravitate to people that are going to take your side, that are just going to hear your story.
And you're absolutely right. You need people that will tell it to you,
like it is.
As it is.
Yeah.
Right, so we are going to pick up the conversation. You're watching Man to Man. On the show with me today is Walter Wanyanya. We're back in a moment. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Man to Man. I'm your host, Hugo in conversation with Walter Wanyanya. Wally, before the break, we touched on a number of issues, and one of those issues is that you were raised by a single mum, very little contact with your father. You're now divorced, don't live with your kids. How was your own experience growing up, or the way you interacted with either of your parents influenced your relationship with your two kids?
I think even though I had a very I had a good upbringing, I think, being raised by my mom by herself, I also learned that I didn't want a situation where my kids are growing up without both parents. That was not the plan for me, that, we would be where we're at right now. And I believe I did my best to be able to make sure that doesn't happen, but life happens. But also, as much as that is the situation, I also still try my best to make sure that I'm present and I'm there for my kids as best as I can. But at the same time, it's a difficult situation to be a father to kids that you're coming home to daily, and to be a father to kids that you spend time with occasionally. It's a totally different ball game, and it's something that I was never prepared to do when I went into marriage.
So how have you figured it out, though?
I've had to figure it out as we go. It's something that you're not taught. There's no school of fatherhood, or there's no school of how to be a father, how to be a divorced father. So again, it's talking to different people. It's meeting and discussing with other brothers and other people that are also going through the same thing, consulting and that kind of thing. But also it's making sure that I understand and I know my kids. Knowing your kids also is going to be important, in how you then can say, okay, cool. This is what I'm going to do as a father. This is what I'm going to do with the kids. How often do you talk to them? How often do you spend time with them? Because your kids are also individuals in their own, in their own right. Yeah. So just like how you get to know other people that are in your life, it's the same for me, I guess, where I'm saying, okay, I know my kids. I know who they are. I know and I know what they like. So I make sure that I I do that, and I'm there and I'm active, and and we just again pray and hope that what you're doing is right, and they turn out to be good people.
And the journey to finding yourself, because I didn't know until maybe 3-4 years ago that you were a biker, and when you're obviously not in your shop. You out roaming the streets of Africa.
So riding for me, I could ride a bike before I could drive a car. So I credit that to a crazy friend of mine called Bruce Wust. He taught me how to ride, in Rusape.
Yeah.
I think it must have been 16, 17 at the time. And then, the bug bit, and that was it. And I got stuck. I loved motorbikes. I obviously researched about them, watched them on TV and that kind of thing. I didn't own a motorbike, but as life would have it, I had an opportunity to be able to buy my first bike about 8 or so years ago, and I did buy one. I used to ride this bike most of the time in South Africa because it was in South Africa, and we would go to South Africa, for work when I was managing Dr. Mtukuzi. So I would ride that bike a lot of times in South Africa until I actually brought it to Zim. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, that's when they actually saw me riding, and in Zimbabwe that is. But I was riding before that, some years before that. And I think maybe the last 3-4 years, that's when I've been posting about my rides and, going all over. The last ride that we did was about 3 weeks ago, from here to Joburg to Botswana to Namibia, to Walvis Bay, and then to the coast, and then back to Zimbabwe via Plumtree.
Very quickly before we go, if you were to meet a random stranger and give them 60 seconds of advice, what would it be?
I'd give them advice that I learned from Brayu, which is something that I live by, and also something that I learned from Uncle Oliver through one of his songs. I would say, from that, 3 words: love, learn, and teach. Love what you do, love people around you, just love. It's one of the greatest commandments that God gave us, and in loving what you do, learn more about it. So if it's golf, as you say, you love golf, you learn more about golf, right? It only makes sense. So learn more. You can never know everything, and you can never get to a point where you say, you know what, I've amassed all the knowledge in the world, I'm never going to be able to learn anything, no one can teach me anything. There's no such thing. So continue learning about whatever it is that you love, and then teach. As you teach, you're also learning, because there's no point in time where you are teaching somebody and you don't know nothing. So if you know that you're going to sit down with somebody, you're going to teach them about something, you're also going to do a little bit of research, right? So as you're teaching, you're also learning. So which then kind of goes back to the learning bit and goes back to the love bit. So you're always falling in love with whatever it is that you are passionate about as you're teaching someone else. And as you see other people excelling in that same thing because you've taught them, it kind of reignites the process. So that's what I learned from Brayu, which is love, learn, and teach. That's that's what I would say. And then there's a song that I live by Dr. Oliver Mtukuzi called Ramangwana Rirongere. I think it's important to plan. It's important to have a plan as a man. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I don't know what's going on today. Tozozona. No, it's yes, plans can change as you go along the way, but then you need to have some kind of plan to say, okay, in 5 years' time, where do I want to see myself? Tomorrow, where am I going to be? The next day, where am I going to be? The next few hours, what am I doing? Yes, there can be spontaneity, but there needs to be some sort of plan that you follow, and life around you is kind of gonna merge into whatever it is that you're already doing. You know, life must find you moving forward, doing something. So yeah, I don't know if that's 60 seconds, but
Well, could be 120, but I appreciate it. Sound advice. Walter Wanyanya, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
No, thank you so much for having me.
And that's where we leave it. Love, learn, teach, right? And plan for tomorrow. You've been watching Man to Man. I'm your host, Hugo. Back at the very same time next week. Remember, we'll leave no man behind. Goodbye.